Hey guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to be talking about the importance of having an emergency fund. Now guys, this is something that I've mentioned briefly in other videos about, helping you guys get your lives together. I've mentioned the importance of obviously having money in case shit happens. But for a while now, I really want to do a complete video on this, really breaking it down in terms of not just why you want to have emergency fund, but also things you can do to help you along the way to get what you need to be. That way, everything's fine in case shit happens. Because as you guys obviously live long enough are well aware, in life, shit happens. I don't care how good things are going in your life, how great your job is, how secure you are in your job, how healthy you are, how much you think your car is functioning properly, or anything like that. Literally at any moment, you could lose your job, okay? Or you're driving to work on the highway and boom, your transmission dies. Or your dog or your cat gets sick. All these things, guys, cost money. And if you don't have money put aside to deal with these things, you're in a load of trouble. And oftentimes, a lot of people end up relying on either borrowing money from family or friends or charging up whatever expense it is on their credit cards. All things that are not a good idea. So you want to have money put aside just in case. I mean, statistically, I've read articles and headlines that talk about how statistically an overwhelmingly large percentage of Americans literally are living paycheck to paycheck. That if one or two paychecks, they're screwed. That's how tight it is. And, people could go back and forth in terms of who to blame, because at the end of the day, everybody wants someone to blame except for themselves. Somebody will blame, it's our economic system's fault that it is that way. Or it's this political party's fault being that's how things are, or that political party's fault. No. I'm about accountability and being responsible for your life and your own actions and taking care of you, not anybody else, and certainly not assigning blame, and it is what it is. So guys, as men, you need to be prepared in case problems arise. And of course, as you know, problems arise. Nobody expected COVID to happen and the impact of it around the world in terms of everything shutting down and so forth. Now again, you can go back to pointing your finger at government policy and all that, but again, it is what it is. So, people that were obviously had jobs they could do at home, they were okay. But people that couldn't do their jobs and lost their jobs, they were in a world of shit once the unemployment benefits ran out, and obviously the bread comes from the government ran out. So guys, you got to be prepared for anything. So my best advice starting off, guys, because most of you guys watching me, I got a whole range of people from young guys in their teens to men that are 60 plus. The older guys have lived long enough, they know this, okay? They've lived long enough, they've had shit happen, they know it's important to have money put aside. But for you younger guys, this is why I stress all the time how important it is when you're young to get a job when you're old enough, 16, and start putting money away right away. Even if you can only do $10 a week or $10 a month or whatever it happens to be, it's money putting it aside. And as you see that money build, you're going to be more cautious when it comes to spending your money on bullshit, which a lot of young people do. Start young. Start when you're living at home with your mom and dad and you don't have to worry about the rent or food or the electric bill or whatever. And put money away and let it grow. As you get older, put more and more money away, okay? For you young guys that obviously don't have a whole lot of responsibilities like the rent and all that stuff, I would make your first mission to put away $500. That $500 is there not for you to use, for you to blow on bullshit like video games or whatever, just in case. Because I'm going to assume if you are working, you at least have your driver's license and you have a car and you need to go from point A to point B to do your job to make your money. Or if you're in college, same thing. Well, if your car breaks down, you got to have money to repair it, right? So you want to have that money. You don't want to borrow from mom and dad or your friends or rack up your credit cards because then you'll kill your credit. And credit is so important, which I talked about in yesterday's video. So start young. And so guys, if you are in college, for instance, and you don't have a whole lot of obviously responsibilities just yet, either you're living at home or you're living in the dorms, and yes, that money is being accumulated in your student loan. Don't get too crazy with those, but if you're doing it, you're doing it. You have the ability right now to put away money and let it grow. Let it grow. $500 at first, then $1,000, then $2,000. Let it get higher. When you get out of college, guys, you are now having your first job. I want your mission to be not saying, okay, I've been at the grind with school all these years. I'm going to piss away my money on this fancy car and piss it away on a apartment I can't really afford, basically living above your means. Guys, you want to live, you want to live where basically you're always having a profit every month, okay? So if you got to live cheap, do that and put the money away, put it aside in the emergency fund, and of course, investing it as well. But have that emergency fund. Now, it is definitely up for debate in terms of how much money somebody ought to have put aside in case of an emergency. A lot of people think that you need to have 1 year's amount of money that you make put aside in case of an emergency, job loss, injury, you name it. Other people say 6 months. Some people even say 3 months. In my experience, based on my own, what I've gone through personally, and other people I've known, what I think is this. I think if you are under the age of 35, let's just say between the working age of your early 20s and 35, and you are in relatively good health, you're going to the gym often, you are getting regular physicals annually, the doctor can see you're okay, eating well, you don't have a whole lot of responsibilities, you don't have any kids, your car's relatively new, let's just say under, on the newer side, under 30,000 miles, even under 40,000 miles, then I would say aim to have 6 months just in case. And when I say 6 months, I don't mean 6 months of living expenses where you factor in trips to Hawaii and trips to Vegas or whatever happens to be, or fancy dinners and all that. I'm talking about the bare minimum, what you need to survive in the event you lose your job or anything happens to you just like that. Because at the end of the day, you can't entirely rely on unemployment benefits, workman's compensation, stuff like that. It's not going to pay as much as you would what you made your regular salary. I would say 6 months worth of that. However, if you are under 35 and you are married and have kids, you have dependents, you have an older car, you have pets that you're responsible for that could get sick, then I'd be aiming more for a year, okay? Or if you're above the age of 35, whether you have dependents, kids, wife, whatever, or an older car, newer car, aim to have 1 year, okay? You can do it. It will take some sacrifices in the beginning if you're not making as much money. So for instance, if you just graduated college, what I'd recommend if you can is that if your parents are cool and you have a good relationship with them, see if you can stay living with them when you first start your job. And that way then, basically, you're still living rent-free, hopefully, and all the extra money coming in from your job, you're putting aside. So you can then have that money there in the event that eventually you move out on your own and you got that 6 months or 1 month of emergency money put aside very easily. So see if you can live at home with them. If you can't live at home, if it's a bad situation or they're a big pain in the ass, whatever it happens to be, then in that case, if you are out of college or you've begun out of trade school and you're in your 20s and you're working now full time, you're doing your thing, then I would definitely take a look at your budget. I would lay it all out and see anywhere where you can cut back. If that means you got to shop at cheaper grocery stores or other type of stores to save money, you do it. If it means you got to do more cooking at home than going out or ordering takeout, you got to do it. If it means that you need to, on the weekend, get a part-time job aside from your regular full-time job, like when the world goes back to normal, let's say you were an Uber driver on Saturday nights, or Sundays or whatever, or taking people to the airport on Uber to make extra money to put aside, do it. Get it while you're young, okay? Do what you got to do. There are so many people in this world that will just sit on their ass and complain they don't have any extra money in case anything happens, but they're unwilling to cut their budget. They're unwilling to take a look and see what they need versus what they want. They're unwilling to do anything necessary like getting an extra part-time job to put the money aside, okay? Again, you can't rely on your family to bail you out. You can't rely on your friends. You shouldn't rack up the credit cards, and definitely don't rely on the government. You're a man. You're responsible for taking care of you. That is part of being a man, all right? So you do these things. You take action. And guys, a couple of years ago, I believe it was December 2018, that's when the government shut down for, I think it was about 6 weeks over Christmas. And to no surprise, you started hearing on the news and news on the radio, because I'd be driving in the car to see clients, and I'd hear this, and they lay out all the sob stories about how the government shut down, and all these government workers, federal workers, all of a sudden, because it's Christmas, they can't buy Christmas presents, or they can't get their kids shoes, or all these type of things. And while certainly you can feel sympathy and have empathy for those that are struggling, my first thought was, aside from a little bit of empathy, being that they are government workers and know that this can happen on occasion, why isn't there an emergency fund put aside? Now, some people might say, well, they're government workers, so they're not going to get paid as much, and all that, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, they know this, and they have families. So again, what they should have done prior to this happening was taking a look at their budget, finding areas where they can cut back temporarily, okay, and putting money aside in the event that something like this would happen. But it's much easier just to cry and blame everybody else and say, woe is me, than to take action. If those individuals that were obviously struggling because the government shut down took those actions in advance, especially if they had kids and families, then in a situation where the government had shut down temporarily and they weren't getting paychecks, at least they'd have something to draw from, okay? Personal responsibility. You got to be reliant on yourself, guys. All right. So this is what you should do. 6 months living expenses, in my opinion, if you're under 35 and in good health and everything's good with your job is pretty secure, or if you're above 35, go for a year, okay? And do whatever you got to do to put that money aside. And once you got that money put aside, you can relax. You'll sleep better at night. I sleep better at night knowing darn well I have years worth of money set aside between what I have in terms of emergency and obviously my investments and stuff. And believe me, I sleep better at night. But there was a time in my life where I had to be smart about the money. And here's the thing, guys. I'm a very frugal individual. I do very well for myself between my businesses, but still, as my income has gone up dramatically over the last couple of years, especially since YouTube started, I still live the same. Okay, nothing's changed. And I stockpile the money because, hey, you know what, one day I may want to retire in my 50s. Or shit could happen. You just never know. But the point is, guys, you need to take it on yourself to be responsible, to take care of you, okay? Don't rely on anybody else to take care of you, because at the end of the day, we're responsible for ourselves. Too many people in this world are lazy and want to blame everybody else for their problems and want somebody else to save them instead of taking action for themselves. It can be done. So, all right, guys, I needed to make a whole video about that. I thought that was an important thing to share. Really dedicate this whole video to that, because sometimes there's questions and confusion about this, but it can be done. So, all right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this, and be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.